Welcome back to Is It Good? And this will be our Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim breakdown video. And yeah, thank you guys for joining us. If it's your first time, hit the like, the subscribe. We've got a lot of interesting things going for the late half or the, the ending actually of 2024 going into 2025. We have some really interesting shows and films coming up. So subscribe if you're interested in more of that. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into my take on Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim. All right, so the main thing with this, my main reasons for even wanting to do this video is because I think that one, I might not be an expert because I've seen experts in the Lord of the Rings fandom, like real experts, experts that study it or even teach it. There are Tolkien courses and stuff like that. Tolkien is considered the godfather of modern high fantasy, and it's with good reason. Um, now, I know I said I'm not a Tolkien expert. It doesn't mean that I'm a Tolkien novice. Actually, I'm a pretty big fan of the works. I've read most of the books. I've read most of the other additional stuff, except for letters and that type of thing. Really, anything having to do with the narrative and the larger Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, Legendarium. I've I'm familiar with it in some way, even if I haven't read the entire thing. So yeah, just to preface it with that, and then also I am also a big anime connoisseur. Let's use that word because fan is one of those words that it's tricky. If I'm a fan of something, I guess there's nothing wrong with being a fan. But I think also with anime, anime is one of those um, I guess you could call it formats that has a lot of fandom. Fandom is actually a huge part of it, which is why you have things like anime conventions and things like that. Um, my thing is those people who do that type of thing, I consider them to be like fans. I think I'm a fan. I think I'm a fan of the stories. Not to say that everyone else isn't a fan of the stories, but I think there's a way where you become a fan of the franchise, or you become a fan of the format of anime itself. And that's not to say I don't love the format of anime. I very much do, but yeah, I think about it the same way I think about film. I'm not. It's not like I love anime more than I love films or TV shows or books even. Or comics. All of them kind of occupy the same weight or a similar weight um, in my book. So yeah, I thought it would be interesting to give my thoughts because I'm a pretty big anime connoisseur on one hand, and then I'm also a pretty big Lord of the Rings connoisseur on the other hand. Um, so yeah, that's the preface for why I'm doing this, um, or why you should even listen to me when it comes to this. So yeah, first off, I guess let me just start with the big question or question on this channel, which is it good? And I'll start by saying, yeah, it's good. Um, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that for the entire time while I was watching it. There are parts of it where I wasn't sure. There are parts of it where I was like, that's a little, you know, it's a little weird. Um, but all in all, when it finished, um, I can say that it was good. And I think, yeah, towards I think where I really got confirmation that this thing is actually a pretty good piece of production is toward the last half, or like the final third, if we break it down into threes. So the final third of the film is where to me it excels, and that's after they've done the setup and the establishing of the world. And I think that that's really interesting because, yeah, that's probably where I would have said maybe they should have thought a little bit more about the pacing of the show. I think they probably could have gotten it on a little bit earlier. Um, but I understand needing to develop and yeah, I understand them introducing us to the characters as well. A lot of these characters we don't know, even if we're big Lord of the Rings fans. So let's kind of check into some of the visuals to see more of the Rohirrim. Yeah, let's take a look at the trailer, see what's going on. So yeah, a lot of these. Wait, no, this is the. No, it's actually the right trailer. It just starts with this. But yeah, from the anime, you can kind of see when the anime kicks in, you kind of see. All right, there you go. So
All Middle Earth knows the
as you
tale
can
of
see,
the War of
they
Rohirrim.
employ the
But
anime's
200 years before that,
character design styles.
there was an older tale.
And this is the main reason for me why I find myself calling it the main reason why I find myself calling it an anime is because in truth they've used the typical character designs for anime. Anime has a style, even though it's a format, it does have typical style. A lot of animes they they kind of manipulate the style. Maybe they go contrary to the style. There are a lot of exceptions to the typical style for sure. But if we're looking at this, look at these characters right here. Look at that. That's an anime style. You know, that's an anime style character design. All of them. Um, and so yeah, even though we start out not knowing any of them, they kind of make it a point of duty to say, yo, let us establish these characters. And I think that's what um, I think that's what the first and second thirds of the movie strive to do. Um, it strives to kind of look at the whole thing and say, all right, we know you guys know the Lord of the Rings franchise. You know Gandalf, you know Frodo, you know Bilbo Baggins, you know the dwarves from the from the Hobbit films. But the question is, do you know the people of Rohan? Which we get some pretty big Rohan scenes in the Lord of the Rings films. In fact, or excuse me. Crazy. Well, yeah, we get some pretty big Rohan scenes in the Lord of the Rings films. The death of the Witch King scene in the series actually takes place in Rohan, and they have a pretty big chunk of that film in the series. So, we're familiar with them in that way. We know Theoden, we know Eowyn, we know her brother Eomer, um, and we know Theoden is the Lord of the Mark. We know those famous scenes when the Rohirrim swoops in and on the battlefield, you know, and Theoden meets his end. And so we kind of know these horse people, um, the people of Rohan from the films, but they're like, well, you don't know these characters in particular because it's set before, it's actually set before, Lord of the Rings in particular. And so they say, okay, let us take the time to establish some of these characters that you might not know. Of course, we got the princess here, we got Wolf, we got Helm, Hammerhand, which we know the name Helm from Helm's Deep, which is where the people of Rohan had to flee to in order to kind of survive the siege of the orcs, right? Um, and so we know Helm's Deep from that, but we don't know. We probably didn't know that it comes from this hero right here, which is Helm Hammerhand, and he's known for his valor. He's known obviously as being the king, the Lord of the Mark here, but he's also known for his supernatural strength. Now, he turns out to be a complete Giga Chad actually in this film. It gets to a point where he literally ends up. Um, it gets to a point where he literally ends up killing people with his bare hands, right? And now it seems it might sound tricky, you know,
Winter hit hard
but
that year.
when you kind of check
Leicester
out
was siege held fast.
um, some of the lore from back in the day about some of these people, um, the Rohan people or the people of the north, which is what the Rohirrim or the people of Rohan represent essentially back in the day is the Norse Viking people of Middle Earth essentially, and so you kind of have that, Helm kind of has that. You don't. He's like part man. He might be part man, might be part god type thing going on, and or not, maybe not part god, but you know how the Norse myths go. They believe that some of their ancestors are descended from gods, and yeah, but the Icelanders are famous for their strength. A lot of the even in modern day, you know, a lot of the international strongman competitions are dominated by Icelandic men that they still have a very strong culture of that, and so of strength. And so Helm is meant to be one of those heroes from that you know time that's gone, where yeah, it's about strength, and sometimes these men kind of seem mythical in a way. Their strength seems mythical, and yeah, I think after they managed to kind of establish some of the things that they established, like the characters in the beginning, what plays up the film to me and what I would say makes it good is that um, third, um, that final third, where I think the film actually shines the brightest, is when it starts to build that mystique of, and I don't want to spoil too much, right? But Helm essentially suffers losses in his family to the point where he's stricken by grief, but his kingdom is also besieged by Wolf, right? Wolf ends up being, Wolf ends up being the protagonist or the antagonist of the story, my bad. And so, yeah, Wolf is the guy we
Heather,
see here,
daughter of Hel. I, Wolf.
right? No, they're not only besieged by Wolf, but Haman suffers these losses within his family. I'm not going to completely spoil it, and so he's stricken by grief. He was wounded for a time, but his wounds eventually healed during the siege. But he just wouldn't wake up, and I think it was because of grief. Obviously, he has his daughter Hella or Hedda. I'm not sure what the correct pronunciation for her name is, but she beseeches him, when he's sort of in this grief core, if you could call it that. And he awakens and he decides to take revenge. No, not only does he take revenge, he creates this mystique where he's basically picking off these men one by one, literally killing them with his bare hands. And that creates this fear in the men, in his enemies, to the point where whenever they see or hear the horn, that he's kind of using this horn too to actually kind of create this sense of dread in the people that he's fighting. And yeah, we see where he's, you know having some success, but obviously he's only one man, and eventually he gets help. And again, I don't want to spoil the entire movie. I want you guys to check it out. But I would say, for me personally, that's where it starts to get good, when it starts to play with that supernatural element, right? No, I'm actually reading a book by Mary Stewart with called The Hollow Hills, which the Hollow Hills, my bad. The Hollow Hills is actually part two for, what's the name? The Crystal Cave, right? Which is also Mary Stewart. and obviously, right? But the Crystal Cave actually is a story. It's her rendition of the Arthurian myth, right? Now Merlin actually in the second book that I'm currently reading, Merlin actually has a quote, and I might be misquoting it here, but Merlin actually has a quote where he says, "Soldiers actually are more superstitious because they live life closer to death." Right? Now there are several things that we could even break down there. That line itself is just like well written. If I could get the exact line, then we could break it down. But for the most part, it's actually right, and that's what we end up seeing in this film is that these soldiers they're actually superstitious, and to the point where this sort of mystique that Helm creates um, towards the final third of the movie, they become possessed by the fear of him, to the point where again I said they whenever they hear his horn they begin to run, and even towards the end where it's not even him, just the word of him, the 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 image, the image of what looks like him, an image that seems to be him, sends the entire army packing. And so, I thought that was well done because, I've read a bit about myself in the legendary realm, and the way they tell these stories is very similar. It's like these Norse people essentially in Middle Earth, but they also have these heroes that are similar to the Nordic heroes of our world, of the real world, where their strength is mythic, we almost supernatural. Now remember, this man is literally killing these men with his bare hands in this film, and so yeah, I think that's where it starts to shine. Um, that's where I made the decision. Okay, I would dub this as good, right? No, where it doesn't shine so well for me is actually in certain parts of the animation, and I think that's where my huge criticism comes in. So yeah, I think where I would say that it falls short is actually right here when it comes to the animation. No, I am a pretty big fan of anime, right? And so watching some of this was a little bit painful, not big painful, but um, it definitely did have its moments where I was like, okay, in actuality, it's not horrible. Like it had moments where I looked at it and I said, they did their big one in this particular scene, right? Not this one that's playing right now, but they did have scenes, you know, where the animation felt real, and I think that's for me, like that's the main point. A lot of the times, it's like, does it feel real? Does it feel alive? Do these people feel like? Does it feel like you're watching an actual real life thing and not just an animation? Um, does it feel rigid, which is that's where anime is coming from, but not where it is right now. Animators in Japan are like killing it right now. So if you want to compare this to that,
Seek your
then
hand in marriage.
we have a bit of
Old man.
there's there's definitely, and this is where Helm basically strikes this man down with his bare hands. But there's a limit to them copying the style from the Japanese animators. Um, But if you want to compare it to things like Demon Slayer, where it's not only fluid, but it's like breaking boundaries and it's showing us things, it's innovating creatively with the animation technology, showing us angles and movements of camera and color and combinations of light and dark that we've never seen before in animation. This, Japanese animation, anime scene and format right now is like leagues ahead of what was done in this. Um, you know, this could still pass for a good anime though, because I've seen anime out there that are rigid or more rigid than this as well. But if we're talking about the top anime right now that are selling the most, talk about Demon Slayer, which that movie outsold a lot of a lot of films in theaters when it came out actually. So if you're talking about the top shelf stuff, this has a far way to go. But it did have its moments where I'm watching and I'm like, okay, I see where they made the effort here. I see where they wanted to give it this feeling of life. They wanted it to feel fluid. But then it definitely also had moments where it felt rigid, even though it looked real, like it didn't look like boxes, like Dragon Ball Z. For those who watched that, the original Dragon Ball Z stuff, it didn't look like rigid with the box shaped clothes and stuff like that. It definitely looks real, but on top of the realness, or how real we want these things to look, they also have to be fluid when they're moving. When the animation is happening, it can't look like it's something rigid that's moving, that pulls us out of this experience that we're having of this thing being real. And so for those reasons, I would grade the animation. I'll give it like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. Overall, I'll give the movie like an 8, just because the story was strong towards the end. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think if I had any other criticisms, I would say what I would have wanted to see here, because this is a good story, it's a good film. What I would have wanted to see here was for them to bring on some Japanese animators. Since you want to do the anime style, you don't have to um, hire non-Japanese people. You could have just hired a Japanese studio to do the animation. And I think, yeah, I think because yeah, this would have been a great payday for them. This would have been, they would have been paid more than probably what they get paid typically to animate stuff in Japan. And so when you look at stuff like that, it's an opportunity to not just pay homage to where these styles come from, but also to put some money in the pockets of some of the people who are doing it, especially at the highest level, but also to produce this content that you're looking to produce at the highest level. And so I would say the animation suffered because of that. I would have liked to see them go down and bring in a studio from Japan to help animate some of this stuff. And I hope, because it kind of seems like they might do something in the future. Towards the end, they had the Gandalf Easter egg where Hedda she's going out to see Gandalf in the end. We also had the Saruman appearance, not Saruman, my bad, Saruman, the wizard, appearance in it as well. So it would kind of seem like this is something that they want to continue. Um, but yeah, I would have loved to see for them to bring on a Japanese studio to get the help with the animation, because their heart is in a good is it's in a good place. Um, but yeah, in terms of what's top notch right now, there's definitely moments in this where I'm like, okay, this is a little bit too stiff. Um, but yeah, is it good? It's good. Is it the best that it could be? Well, that's never what we're here to answer. Um, so yeah, thank you for tuning in. We made it to the end of the video. Please drop a like if you thought I missed anything, or if there's anything that you guys would want me to talk about. You can drop them in the comments. Hit the subscribe button again. Share with your friends to bring us in the algorithm. We have a bunch of stuff coming up. We will be doing the Superman trailer pretty soon. So look out for that. I'm going to be doing like a live reaction to that, because I have not actually looked at that, and I've been waiting for a long time for it to drop. I'm not big on trailers because I just want to see the movie. Partly because I worked in marketing as well. I don't really enjoy being marketed too heavily. I already want to see these movies, so I'm not huge on trailers. But I'll be doing this particular trailer and whatever other trailer I might be interested in, which is not very often. So you can look forward to that Superman trailer coming up. We got some interesting stuff coming for the new year, and yeah, I might actually do a movie breakdown before the year end if I end up watching a Christmas movie. So subscribe for that, and see you in the next one. Take care.